So imagine you're about to wash your face.
Right.
It's something you've done literally thousands of times. You turn on the tap, you splash some water, grab a towel, and you're done.
Yeah, simple enough.
Right. But now imagine there is a 1,400-year-old legal text dictating exactly, and I mean exactly, which finger you have to use to clean your ears.
Oh, wow.
Or like which hand you use to rinse your mouth, and exactly how much water you're allowed to use, practically down to the drop.
It's incredibly specific.
It really is. So today we're doing a deep dive into Lesson 1 from a classical text called Talim ul Fiqh.
Right?
And our mission today is to unpack the Islamic practice of wudu, which is the physical preparation for prayer. And when you dive into these sources, you quickly realize this isn't just about washing dirt off your hands. It's this meticulously engineered system of exactly 45 distinct rules.
45.
Yeah.
Yet it really shifts your perspective on what preparation actually means, because the text, it basically provides this masterclass on moving from a simple physical action into this highly structured meditative state. We're talking about codifying mindfulness, centuries before it became like a modern buzzword.
Exactly. And I kind of want to approach this text today, trying to understand the logic behind these 45 rules, almost like an eager student coming to a knowledgeable teacher, right?
I like that dynamic.
Because when you first look at the source material, it divides this entire process into 4 distinct categories. So you have the absolute obligations, the traditions, the etiquettes, and finally, the disliked actions.
Right, and it's important to set the baseline here before we even get into those categories. In Islamic law, or Sharia, wudu isn't just this vague concept of freshening up.
Okay.
The text formally defines it as the act of washing the face, washing the hands, washing the feet, and wiping the head. That specific combination is the core definition.
So just those specific body parts.
Exactly. And the book also notes that the preceding lessons in the curriculum, they were all just defining terminology. So this right here, this is the student's first practical hands-on lesson.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that first category, right? The absolute obligations, which the text calls the faraid.
Yes, the saray.
There are exactly 4 of them. And as I was reading this, I kept thinking of these like the load-bearing walls of a house,
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, because without them, the entire structure of the wudu just collapses. If you miss even one of these 4 steps, legally, the wudu just does not exist.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right.
These are the absolute non-negotiable minimums. So first, you have to wash the entire face once.
Okay.
Second, wash both hands up to and including the elbows once. Third, wipe 1/4 of the head once.
Just 1/4.
Right, at a minimum. And fourth, wash both feet up to and including the ankles once.
Okay, so I have to ask the question that came up immediately when I read this. If the ultimate goal here is cleanliness before, standing in front of the divine, why isn't soap part of these absolute obligations?
No.
I mean, why is water alone considered legally sufficient? Because if I've been working outside all day, splashing water on my face once isn't going to get the grease off.
That is a brilliant distinction to make, and it gets to the very heart of what wudu actually is. So the jurists differentiate between physical dirt, which they call nafaza, basically hygiene, and ritual impurity, which is related to tahara, or spiritual purity.
Oh, okay. So they are 2 different things.
Exactly. Wudu is not a shower. It's a ritual act of transitioning from a mundane state to a sacred state. The water acts as a spiritual solvent, not just a physical one.
A spiritual solvent. I like that.
Right. So if you have literal grease or dirt on you, yes, obviously, you should use soap to remove it first. But the wudu itself is a symbolic and spiritual cleansing that requires the purity of natural water.
Okay, that makes so much sense. The water is the medium for the ritual, not necessarily just a degreaser.
Right.
But here's my other question about the load-bearing walls. The absolute obligation only requires washing each part exactly once. But anyone who has ever seen someone prepare for Islamic prayer knows the famous rule of thumb is to wash everything 3 times.
Right, right. And this is where we upgrade. If the obligations are the load-bearing walls, the next category is how the Prophet perfectly furnished and decorated the house.
Okay, I see.
Doing it once fulfills the absolute legal minimum, the faraid. But washing 3 times belongs to the second category in our text, which is the Sunnahs, or the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad.
And the text gives us a list of 19 distinct sunnahs. 19. These are the practices that elevate this from just a basic, legally valid wash to a complete prophetic practice.
Exactly.
So let's look at the first few, which are all basically about preparation. It starts with making a conscious intention, then saying Bismillah, which is beginning in the name of Allah.
Right.
Then you wash your hands up to the wrists and use a miswak, which is a traditional toothstick, to clean your teeth.
So let's linger on that first one for a second, the intention. Because this ties directly back to what we were just saying about ritual versus physical washing.
Oh.
Because think about it. If you fall into a swimming pool, your face, your arms, your feet, they all get wet. You have physically completed the 4 mandatory actions.
Yeah, you're definitely washed.
But do you have wudu? No, because you lacked the internal intention to perform an act of worship. The physical action has to be married to the psychological focus.
It prevents the act from becoming just an empty habit. You're mentally clocking in.
Exactly.
Okay, so after the prep, the text moves to the mouth and nose. You're instructed to gargle and to bring water up into the soft part of the nose. But there's a fascinating caveat here.
The fasting one.
Yeah. The text says you should exaggerate this, like be incredibly thorough with the gargling and rinsing, unless you are fasting.
Yes. What's fascinating here is that the goal is ultimate purification. So naturally, you want the water to reach as far as possible.
Yeah.
But the law is intensely practical.
Right.
If you are fasting, you're commanded to hold back. You perform a gentle rinse so you don't accidentally swallow a drop of water and invalidate your fast.
I love that. It shows how the rules of Islamic law negotiate with one another. Like the rule for fasting supersedes the rule for thoroughness in wudu.
Exactly.
And we see another one of those legal intersections when the text moves to the face and head. It says if you have a thick beard, you are supposed to comb your wet fingers through it, an action called hilal. But again, there's an exemption.
Unless you are in the state of ihram.
Right.
Yeah, and ihram is the sacred state a person enters when performing the Hajj or Umrah pilgrimages. When you're in ihram, there are strict prohibitions against altering your body, which includes removing any hair.
Ah, I see.
So combing wet fingers through a thick beard carries the risk of accidentally pulling out a loose hair. So the jurists say, skip this specific sunnah while in ihram.
Wow.
It's a profound example of legal harmony. The scholars who mapped this out weren't just looking at wudu in a vacuum. They were cross-referencing it with the entire matrix of Islamic jurisprudence.
It's essentially this beautifully complex flowchart of if this, then that. So, moving up to the head, the sunnahs dictate that you start wiping the head from the front. And here we see an upgrade from the mandatory rules. Because the obligation was just 1/4 of the head, but the sunnah is wiping the entire head once, followed by wiping both ears.
Right. And then the text directs our attention to the limbs and very specifically the spaces between the digits.
Oh, this part was so interesting.
Yeah, you're supposed to start washing from the tips of the fingers and toes and actively interlace your fingers through your toes while washing them.
I noticed a distinct pattern here. Why focus so heavily on the toes and fingers?
Well, think about the psychology of autopilot.
Okay.
When you wash your feet in the shower, you probably just let the soapy water run over them, right? It's
Yeah.
completely passive.
Yeah, definitely. I don't really think about it.
Exactly. But by requiring the practitioner to physically reach down, bend over, and deliberately thread their fingers between their toes, the law acts as a cognitive interrupt. You literally cannot do this on autopilot. It forces you to be present in your physical body.
That is such a crucial insight. Autopilot is basically the enemy of mindfulness.
Exactly.
And that need for active presence continues into what the text describes as the methodology of the wash. This is where your 3 washes come in. The sunnah dictates washing every part fully 3 times.
Right.
It also requires actively rubbing the parts, following a strict sequence, washing the right side of the body before the left, and doing it all continuously so one part doesn't dry before you move to the next.
The continuity rule is particularly interesting. It means you can't, wash your face, go answer a text message, check your email, and then come back to wash your arms.
Right.
It has to be a single, unbroken chain of worship.
I have to be honest, though, I'm looking at this list. We have 4 absolute obligations and 19 highly specific traditions. We are at 23 rules, and we aren't even finished yet.
Not even close.
For a modern listener, this might sound incredibly stressful, like it borders on OCD. How did classical jurists prevent this massive checklist from becoming a source of anxiety for the average person?
It's a very fair question, and the classical scholars were highly attuned to it. They explicitly warn against waswasa, which is this kind of religious obsessive-compulsive whispering where you constantly doubt if you watched enough or did it right.
Right, like did I do it 3 times or 2 times?
Exactly. The key is understanding that these 19 sunnahs are goals of perfection. They're not tripwires for punishment. If you forget to interlace your toes one day, your prayer is still completely valid. The load-bearing walls are still up.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
This framework is meant to be a ladder you climb to achieve greater focus, not a hammer to beat yourself up with if you miss a step.
That reframing is really helpful. It's an aspiration, not an interrogation.
Beautifully put.
And speaking of striving for perfection, the text introduces a third category, the adab and mustahabat. So the etiquettes are desirable acts. There are 12 of these.
12 more, yep.
Yeah. So if the faraids are the walls and the sunnahs are the furniture, these 12 etiquettes are like, I don't know, the perfect lighting and the ambient music, they're the polish.
Exactly. They take the spiritual reward to its absolute maximum.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The level of detail here is where it shifts from a routine into almost a highly choreographed routine where every micro movement has a distinct purpose.
Very much so.
Let's look at the posture first. The text recommends sitting in a clean, elevated place and facing the Qibla, which is the direction of Mecca, while you wash.
And facing the Qibla is deeply symbolic. You are physically setting the GPS of your soul before you even begin the prayer. You're aligning your compass.
I love that. And then we get to the hand choreography. I found this fascinating. The etiquette dictates using specifically the right hand to take water in, to gargle and rinse the nose.
Right.
But you must use the left hand to actually clean the nose. And you use the left hand to rub the feet. What is the underlying logic of separating the hands' duties like this?
It stems from the historical hygienic logic of pre-modern Islamic societies, which is actually still practiced in many parts of the world today. The right hand is traditionally reserved for noble or clean acts. So eating, shaking hands, taking in pure water.
Right.
And the left hand is designated for removing impurities or cleaning oneself. So using the right hand to introduce the pure water to the face and the left hand to clean the nose or scrub the feet, it maintains this strict hygienic firewall.
A hygienic firewall. It is incredibly deliberate. And then there are these tiny physical nuances. When you wash your face, you start specifically from the forehead. When you wipe your ears, you don't just brush over them. You insert your pinky fingers, your little fingers, into the ear holes, and you wipe your neck.
The pinky finger detail is always one that stands out to people.
Yeah, why the pinky specifically?
Well, it ensures water reaches the intricate folds of the ear without causing any damage. You're not jamming a larger finger in there. It's practical, but it also demands that hyper-specific focus we've been talking about.
Wow. And the text caps off these 12 etiquettes with 3 spiritual additions, reciting transmitted supplications or du'as during and after the process, drinking the leftover wudu water. Right.
And finally, praying 2 short units of prayer called tahiyat al-wudu right afterward, assuming it isn't during a time of day when extra prayers are disliked.
You know, if you step back and look at these etiquettes, you realize the jurists were essentially doing motion capture on the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh, that's a cool way to think about it.
Right. They observed every single micro movement, every preference for the right hand over the left, and documented it to preserve that exact physical and spiritual state for future generations.
Okay, so we have the 4 obligations, 19 traditions, and 12 etiquettes. We are at 35 distinct actions to build the perfect wudu.
35, yes.
But the text doesn't end there, because building the perfect state of mindfulness is only half the battle. You also have to protect it.
Right.
And that brings us to the final category, the makruhat, or the disliked actions. There are 10 of them.
Yes. And these are actions that won't necessarily invalidate your wudu. Again, your load-bearing walls haven't collapsed.
But they introduce malware, to use your tech analogy from earlier. They actively decrease your spiritual reward, and they kind of chip away at the perfection you just spent 35 steps building.
Let's examine these, because they really act like a shield. The first few deal with the environment and distractions, so it's disliked to perform wudu in an impure place, or to have someone else wash your limbs for you unless you have a valid physical excuse.
Yes.
But the one that really stood out to me was the prohibition against engaging in unnecessary worldly talk during the process.
Oh, that is a vital rule. Think about why you're doing this. You're transitioning from the chaotic, noisy, mundane world into a private audience with the Creator.
Right.
If you're washing your arms while loudly debating politics or discussing what to have for lunch, you've completely shattered the meditative state.
Yeah.
You are physically washing, but mentally, you're still covered in the noise of the world.
You're ruining the cognitive interrupt we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
The next few Makruh are essentially about reversing the etiquettes, scrambling that hand choreography. So it's disliked to gargle with the left hand, to put water in the nose with the left hand, or to clean the nose with the right hand.
Yeah, because scrambling that pattern disrupts the prophetic model and breaks that hygienic firewall we just discussed.
But the final four Makruh, this is where I was genuinely stopped in my tracks.
The water ones.
Yes, they are entirely focused on water mismanagement. It is disliked to forcefully splash or slap water onto your face. It's disliked to use unnecessarily excessive water. It's disliked to wash any part more than 3 times. And on the flip side, it's disliked to use so little water that properly washing becomes difficult.
It's striking, isn't it, if we connect this to the bigger picture?
It's more than striking. It's a 1,400-year-old legal text codifying environmental conservation.
It really is.
Using too much water isn't just wasteful in a, civic sense. The text categorizes it as actively disliked in a religious sense. It literally detracts from your spiritual reward. You can't just leave the tap running.
And we have to remember the context here. This practice originated in 7th century Arabia. That's a desert environment where water was quite literally a matter of life and death.
Right.
But instead of just saying, hey, be careful with the water, Islamic jurisprudence tied ecological preservation directly to spiritual salvation. It elevated water conservation to an act of worship, because wasting water while preparing for prayer is a contradiction. How can you worship the Creator while carelessly squandering His creation?
Wow. It forces a profound balance. Don't be wasteful, but don't be so rigid and stingy that you fail to actually wash. It demands constant drop-by-drop awareness of the resource you're holding in your hands.
And that perfectly encapsulates the entire lesson. The author of the text concludes with this beautiful summary of this whole system.
Yeah.
The jurists systematically gathered exactly 4 obligations, 19 traditions, 12 etiquettes, and 10 disliked actions. That is 45 distinct rules. The text compares this painstaking extraction to picking individual specific flowers to create a perfect, fragrant bouquet of wudu.
That is a stunning metaphor.
It is. And the text reminds the student of the ultimate why behind memorizing all 45 of these rules. Because it isn't to become a rigid robot.
Right.
It isn't to show off how many rules you know. The goal is to perfectly mirror the beloved Prophet Muhammad out of profound love and reverence. By aligning your physical movements with his, you maximize the hope that your worship will be accepted and your rewards multiplied.
It's imitation born out of love.
Precisely.
So, before we wrap up, just a bit of housekeeping mentioned in the source material. The next topic in their sequence will be the actual method of Wudu, which essentially puts this 45-step theory into fluid practice.
Oh, okay.
And the author also notes that the Talim ul-Fiqh PDF is available in the description for anyone who wants to download it, share it, and turn this knowledge into Sadaqat Sharia, which is ongoing, continuous charity.
It's an incredible resource. And seeing how meticulously they mapped out this single lesson really makes you appreciate the depth of classical scholarship.
It truly does. So what does this all mean for us today? I mean, we just spent this entire deep dive looking at 45 hyper-specific rules, the separation of hand duties, the cognitive interrupt of interlacing toes, the environmental mandate to protect every single drop of water.
And all of that just to get clean.
Exactly. But here is the critical insight. This entire 45-step, highly choreographed process is just the preparation. It is literally just getting ready.
Yeah.
So I want to leave you with this thought to mull over. If classical jurists painstakingly extracted 45 distinct micro rules demanding complete physical, mental, and environmental mindfulness just for the physical act of washing, how much deeper and how much more profound must the required mental and spiritual mindfulness be once you actually dry your hands and step onto the parade mat?